I'm sure you have all heard of those free texture websites like CC0 Textures or TextureHaven.com where you can get free textures for literally anything, and it's amazing. But if you're going to do that, I advise that you put in a little bit of extra work and make them custom to your own models, and I'm going to show you how to do that in this video with very little work required. Here we are in Blender. I've imported all of these texture maps and just plugged them into the principled BSDF, and I've also used box mapping so that I won't be having any UV projection issues here. If we look at this, it's a little bit generic and bland because the texture just repeats and the texture isn't specific to the model that I've got here. So if I want this to look better, I'm going to have to put in some work on my own time. If this statue that I put it on was a background asset in this scene, then I wouldn't be worrying about this, but this statue is kind of in the forefront of what the camera is looking at, so I'm going to do some customization. Our options here are either to hand paint in new textures by UV unwrapping the model and making some new texture maps, or we could just use some procedural nodes, and that's definitely the better option here if I want to save on time. What we need are some nodes that can give us data based on the geometry that the material is applied to. So something like the ambient occlusion node, the bevel node, or the pointiness output of the geometry node. Now, the bevel node and that pointiness output, those are only going to work in cycles, but ambient occlusion works in Eevee so long as that is toggled on in your Eevee setting. So once we've got one of those nodes in, we can look at the output by using Control-Shift as long as the Node Wrangler add-on is enabled. And this is what it gives us. If we throw down a color ramp and slide those back and forth a bit, we can get some drastically different white and black values just based on our vertices. And that's exactly what we want, because now we can duplicate our texture map node, run that through something like a hue saturation value node, and then plug that into a mix RGB along with our base texture. Then we can take the color ramp output that's using the ambient occlusion, bevel, or geometry node as a base and plug that into the factor. And now we can have a different color or different, sort of luminosity on our texture maps depending on where on the model it's situated, which is just really cool and provides us just a bit more texture detail and a little bit more nuance without very much work. We can also apply this to some other stuff, for example throwing the color ramp into the normal using a bump mapping node, or we could use something like a gradient node and a noise texture put together with, say, a math node, and then we can just use that as another mix RGB for some top-down rust on this statue here. The possibilities are pretty limitless, and all of these go together pretty quickly, especially if you've practiced it before. It's a lot faster than hand painting new textures on, and you don't have to UV unwrap your model. So this is definitely what I'd suggest if you're going to use texture maps from those free websites. Using texture maps just by themselves with the box mapping is pretty obvious. If it's a background asset, don't worry about it. But if it's something in the forefront and you want to customize it a bit without very much work, then nodes are definitely the way to go. If this video helped you out, then go ahead, like and subscribe, and maybe leave a comment if you have any questions. It just helps the channel out and helps promote it in the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to get the project file that I've been showing off in this video, you can get that at my Patreon. That's the first link down in the description. And there you can just help support the channel, and it's freaking awesome. And I want to thank all the patrons that helped me out over there. That's Eric Dottier, Edwin Zeman, Peter Stomberg, Industry WM, Yup Williamson, Gary Campbell-Dempsey, Don Hopkins, Justin Oliver, Stephen D. Swanee, Matt, Atomic Alf, Susan Uncle, and Terry Davis. You guys are awesome. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. Go out, have a good time in Blender today, and have a nice day. Peace out.